At my mom's retirement party, the one I paid for, my little brother gave a speech calling her his therapist and best friend. Then he called me the corporate machine. Even my mom laughed. I walked out. No goodbye. I don't know what I expected, but it sure wasn't that. My name's Ava. I'm 38 years old, and I live in Stamford, Connecticut. I run my own architectural firm, and I've been footing the bill for my parents' lifestyle for over a decade. That includes the catered wine and cheese buffet at my mother's retirement party, the open bar, the string quartet in the back, all of it. And yet, there I was, seated like a guest in a celebration I paid for, watching my younger brother Jonah clink his wine glass and stand up to give a toast. To the woman who gave me everything, he said, grinning like he was accepting an Oscar. Mom, you've been my biggest fan, my safe place, my sounding board, my therapist, and my best friend. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I had nothing but a dream and a stack of sketchbooks. Everyone chuckled warmly. Mom wiped a tear. A few people clapped. And then came the part that made something cold settle in my chest. And of course, Jonah added with a wink, my brilliant sister Ava, our corporate machine, keeps this ship running. Laughter. Like it was a joke. Even Mom laughed. We'd be lost without her, she chimed in, raising her glass. Cold and efficient, but reliable as a Swiss train. More laughter. I smiled. The kind of smile you wear when you know you're being mocked, but you also know you're not allowed to show it. I clinked a few glasses, nodded at a few coworkers who'd come to be polite, and stood up quietly. I didn't make a scene. I didn't say goodbye. I just grabbed my coat, walked out the side door, and stepped into the cool night air. Halfway to my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. You'll regret this. No context, no apology, just that. I stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring slightly. Then I slid the phone into my purse and sat in my car, hands gripping the wheel. It hit me, finally, the kind of clarity that only comes after a slow build of quiet betrayals. They didn't love me. Not really. Not the way they loved Jonah. They loved what I did for them. They loved that the bills were always paid, that the insurance never lapsed, that the fridge was full and the cable stayed on. But me, the person underneath the money? I was just a tool. Jonah, the dreamer, the artist who hadn't held a steady job since 2015, got a standing ovation. I got a nickname. I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later. That night, I just sat in the silence and thought, that's the last party I'll ever pay for. The office was quiet when I got in early Monday morning. I like it that way. Just the low hum of the coffee machine, the soft creak of my desk chair. It's the only place where things make sense, where I can look at a blueprint and know exactly how it fits together. If only families worked like that. People assume that because I run an architectural firm, I came from money, but I didn't. Every brick, every steel beam of my career, I laid myself. From late nights drafting in college to weekends networking at industry events I couldn't afford, I built something real. And it didn't just support me, it supported them. For the last 10 years, I've been paying my parents' condo fees. I covered Mom's heart meds, Dad's hearing aids, groceries when the fridge went empty, utilities when winter hit hard. I even paid off a lien on their car a few years back. Quietly. No thanks necessary. Jonah, though, he got praised for remembering birthdays and bringing homemade banana bread to family dinners. They called him sensitive, passionate, an old soul. He's an artist, even though he hasn't sold a painting in years and spends most days watching YouTube tutorials on watercolor techniques. He still lives at home, by the way, in the guest room I helped renovate. They never asked how I managed it all, how I juggled payroll and property taxes and still had enough left to send Mom a spa gift card every Mother's Day. To them, that was just what Ava did. She took care of things. I went over to the condo one Saturday a few weeks after the retirement party, brought a batch of bills I'd been consolidating, trying to simplify the mess of auto payments I was tracking for them. The front door was cracked open when I got there. I heard their voices before I even stepped inside. She only helps so she can feel superior, Jonah said. His voice was low but sharp, like he'd practiced the line. I froze just outside the hallway. She likes having control, he continued. Everything's in her name, the cable, the insurance, even your damn prescriptions. Don't you think that's weird? Then my mother, my own mother, sighed and said, you're right. It's like she uses money to keep score. I didn't make a sound. I stood there with a stack of bills in one hand and my throat tight like it had been cinched with rope. Their words hit harder than they should have. Not because they were harsh, but because they were rehearsed. Familiar. Like they'd been said before. I stepped back slowly, careful not to let the door creak, and walked right back down to my car. Sat there for 10 minutes staring at the dashboard, the envelope still in my lap. That was the moment it really sank in. No matter how much I gave them, no matter how many sacrifices I made behind the scenes, I'd never be the hero in this story. Jonah would always be the misunderstood artist, and I'd always be the cold, calculating bank account with legs. And worst of all, they believed it. I didn't say anything after that day. No dramatic text, no confrontation, just silence. I let it breathe. Instead of blowing everything up, I watched. Observed. Took mental notes the way I used to in business meetings with clients I didn't trust. Every dinner, every family phone call, it was all the same act. Jonah cracking jokes, mom laughing too loud, dad nodding like a bobblehead, and me, sitting at the table like an outsider with a resume. Their provider, their corporate machine, still welcome, but never really seen. So I started pulling back, quietly, strategically. The first thing I did was cancel the Netflix account. I'd been paying for it for years, and I knew Jonah used it daily. A week later, mom called. "Ava, the Netflix isn't working," she said casually, like it was a customer service call. "Oh," I replied, "maybe the card expired. I'll look into it." I didn't. Next was the Amazon Prime subscription. Then the quarterly family beach rental that I usually booked on my card and let them pay me back, which, of course, they never did. I stopped ordering the expensive wine Jonah liked for holidays. Brought a modest bottle instead and smiled when he barely touched it. Vacations? Didn't bring them up. Let the spring trip to Vermont fizzle out like it never existed. At first, no one noticed. They assumed things just slipped. But by month 4, I saw the shift. Mom started dropping passive-aggressive hints. "I guess we're not doing family trips anymore," she said during dinner one night. I shrugged. "Guess not." They didn't ask why. They didn't ask if something was wrong. They just complained about the inconvenience, about the tight budget, about how hard things were now. That's when I knew. Their love, their attention, their praise, their inclusion, had never been unconditional. It was a contract, one I had unknowingly signed years ago. Keep the bills paid, keep the fridge full, keep the fun coming, and in return, you get a seat at the table. Not affection, not real respect, just access. Without the perks, I was just a worker bee they couldn't figure out how to replace. Jonah kept up the show, still called me Avies in that fake affectionate tone, still acted surprised when I didn't laugh at his jokes. I played along, let him keep performing, but I stopped feeding it. I stopped giving them the version of me they were used to, the dependable ghost who showed up with checks and left before dessert. I stayed quiet, observant, still. And with every small thing I took back, every service, every silent expense they'd once taken for granted, I watched the cracks in their comfort grow. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity, and it confirmed everything I'd already suspected. They only loved me when I was useful. Dad's birthday came around in early March. Jonah sent out a group text asking if we could all chip in for a fancy dinner party. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, another message came, just from Mom. "Ava, your brother's trying so hard. Please be supportive." So I showed up. Like always. I brought a modest bottle of wine, not the reserved kind Jonah used to request, not the stuff that made people raise their eyebrows in appreciation, just a decent red. One bottle. No cake, no card, no gifts. The moment I walked in, the house was full of voices and music and laughter. My parents' condo had been rearranged to make room for a little buffet table. Streamers sagged from the ceiling, and someone had made a playlist of Dad's favorite 70s songs. I stood near the doorway for a moment, watching. Jonah was in the center of it all, holding court like a game show host. He was wearing a vintage suede jacket, glass of whiskey in hand, talking about his new mixed media phase. Everyone laughed when he made some crack about how he couldn't keep his art in stock. "Gotta slow down," he said, winking. "Can't make my millions too fast." Then Mom stood up with a glass of Prosecco and said, "To our birthday boy, and to Jonah, who brings joy to every room." Everyone clapped. I waited. Maybe she'd add my name. Maybe she'd say something. But no. Nothing. Not even a glance in my direction. I stood by the hallway, sipping my wine like a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong house. No one asked how work was going. No one said thank you for the holiday groceries I'd sent last December, the last thing I covered before I started pulling away. No one noticed when I quietly walked to the coat rack, picked up my things, and headed for the door. I didn't slam it. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't cry. I just walked out, no noise, no fuss, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was finally going somewhere else. I didn't make an announcement. I didn't post a dramatic goodbye. I just disappeared. The first thing I did was change my bank accounts. Every autopay I'd set up for my parents, gone. The condo fees, the co-op insurance, the shared grocery delivery app, all of it, shut down. I even called the pharmacy and told them to take my name off my mother's prescription account. They'd have to pick up and pay in person now. Then I moved. Nothing dramatic, just downsized, a smaller apartment, closer to my office. No more long drives past their exit. No more reminders of who I used to be to them. For the first time in 10 years, my paycheck was mine. The silence that followed was strange. At first, I thought my phone was broken. A full week passed with no calls, no texts. I started to wonder if maybe I'd overestimated my place in their lives. Then the flood came. It started with a text from Mom. "The internet's not working. Can you check the bill?" Then another. "We were charged a late fee on the HOA. Did your payment get declined?" I didn't respond. By day 10, her tone shifted. "This is really immature, Ava." Then Jonah chimed in. Wow, you ghost us and expect us to grovel? Grow up. I blocked them both. It should have felt peaceful, a clean break. But one night, I logged into my bank account to check a payment from a client and saw a warning banner. Your password was recently reset. If this wasn't you, please call us immediately. My stomach dropped. I hadn't changed anything. I called the fraud hotline and spoke to a woman named Tamara who had the tired but efficient voice of someone who'd seen everything. There was an attempt to access your account from an unknown device, she said. Someone tried to reset your password twice. They failed the security questions. I asked for the IP address. It was a residential connection, in the same area my parents lived, less than 5 miles from their condo. I felt the blood drain from my face. Did they get in? No, Tamara said, but it was close. They answered 2 of the 3 security questions correctly. If you hadn't updated your backup email, they would have gotten in. I thanked her and hung up. I knew who it was. Jonah used to borrow my tablet. Mom knew my first dog's name, the street I grew up on. My old passwords were probably written down in that little notepad she kept next to the phone. They hadn't just accepted the cutoff. They'd gone digging, snooping, invading. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the login screen of a locked-down account, and felt something settle in my chest. Not fear, not sadness. Resolve. They weren't going to let me go quietly, but they had no idea how loud I could be when I stopped caring about keeping the peace. It had been 2 weeks since the attempted breach. I'd already changed every password, shut down compromised cards, and reported the incident to the bank. They flagged a login attempt from an unfamiliar device, an old tablet registered under my name but used in my parents' condo. I didn't need a detective to figure out what happened. That Sunday, I drove over to the condo. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want a chance for them to prepare a speech or a trap. I wanted their unfiltered reaction. The door was unlocked when I arrived. I pushed it open and stepped into a living room that smelled like laundry detergent and reheated coffee. Jonah was slouched on the couch in his usual sweatpants, watching some art vlog on his laptop. Mom stood by the dining table, folding towels like we were still in some kind of sitcom. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. Wow, Jonah said, not looking up. The ghost returns. Don't, I said. My voice was flat, tired. Mom looked over, eyebrows raised. We didn't expect visitors. I pulled out the bank printout and laid it on the coffee table. You want to explain this? Jonah finally closed his laptop. He glanced at the paper and gave a lazy shrug. Looks like a mistake. I stared at him. An unrecognized device tried to access my account from this IP address. My old iPad. The one that mysteriously stopped working last year and got donated, remember? Are you accusing your family of stealing from you? Mom asked, folding another towel with painful calm. I'm not accusing, I said. I'm stating a fact. Jonah leaned back, arms behind his head. Maybe if you weren't so dramatic, you'd still be part of this family. That hit harder than I expected. Dramatic? I said slowly. You used my device to try to access my bank account. I just wanted to check if you were okay, Mom said, stepping in now. Her voice was softer, but the tone behind it wasn't concern, it was control. You've been so distant. We were worried. Worried, I repeated, stunned. So you figured you'd break into my accounts? You crossed a legal line, and your response is that I'm dramatic? It wasn't about money, she added quickly. We just needed to know if you were still part of the family. If you were reachable. Jonah scoffed. Please. You act like you're some saint. You walked out. You cut us off like we were strangers. You made me a stranger, I snapped. Every dinner, every holiday, you erased me in front of my face. I was the one paying for the meals, and still, you treated me like I didn't belong. You walked out on Dad's birthday, Mom said, like it was the final proof of my betrayal. I watched you toast Jonah as the one who brings joy while I stood there with a bottle of wine you didn't even open. I shot back. What was I supposed to do, beg for a chair at a table I paid for? They both went quiet. That's when it hit me. They really didn't think they'd done anything wrong. They'd twisted everything in their heads so that I was the villain. I had money, so I had no right to feel hurt. I had independence, so they decided I must be cold. It wasn't just betrayal. It was delusion. I came here to give you a chance to explain, I said, my voice now calm again. But you can't even own it. You don't think you've done anything wrong. Mom crossed her arms. Because we haven't. That was it. That was the moment I stopped hoping they'd ever see it. I'll be in touch through my lawyer, I said. Any further contact from either of you, especially involving my accounts, will be considered harassment. I turned and walked out. And this time I didn't look back. I knew they wouldn't go down quietly, but I didn't think it would escalate so fast. At first, it was just the usual guilt tactics. Voicemails I didn't listen to. Texts I deleted without reading. Jonah sent one that said, "You think you're better than us now? Let's see how long that lasts." I screenshotted it. Just in case. Then came the strange sightings. The first night, I saw a black sedan parked across the street from my new apartment. Nothing suspicious at first, but it was there again the next night. Same spot. Engine off. Lights out. I told myself it was a coincidence. A neighbor's guest. An Uber driver on break. Until the third night. I came home late from the office and the car was there again. This time a man sat inside with his phone out, pretending to scroll, but never actually looking at the screen. When I turned toward the building, he got out, just stood by the sidewalk, fake texting. I crossed the street instead of going inside. Walked past him slow, like I didn't notice anything. He didn't look at me, but he shifted, slightly. Just enough to let me know he'd noticed me too. You waiting for someone? I asked, voice neutral. He looked up, startled. Huh? Oh, no. Just directions. Lost signal. Funny, I said. My signal works fine here. He forced a smile, slipped his phone into his pocket, and walked away, fast. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I got a message from my mother. If you won't talk to us, we'll find someone who can. My fingers went cold. She didn't say what she meant, didn't name names. But I knew that tone, the sharp edge wrapped in faux concern. The kind she used when I was 13 and didn't want to show her my report card. The same tone she used when I didn't invite them to my firm's first open house. Only now, instead of grounding me, she was sending someone to watch my apartment. They weren't just hurt. They were strategizing. Jonah always loved playing the victim, but Mom? She was the tactician. The one who taught him how to twist the truth just enough to make the fallout seem like your fault. That night, I changed my locks. Again. I installed a second deadbolt, mounted a camera above my door, set up motion alerts linked to my phone, and I sat in my apartment with the blinds down, waiting. They had started a war, and I wasn't running anymore. I used to think boundaries were emotional. You draw invisible lines. You say no a little louder each time. You hope people respect the word instead of trying to crack it open. But my family didn't care about invisible lines, so I built real ones. First, I filed a police report. Harassment, suspected stalking, and attempted digital intrusion. The officer was polite but skeptical, until I showed him the screenshots, the IP trace report from my bank, and the text from my mother. She threatened to send someone? He asked, raising an eyebrow. I nodded, and then someone showed up. He took my statement, gave me a case number, and said someone from the precinct would follow up. I didn't expect them to do much, but I wanted it on record. Paper trail. Next, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I called Chelsea, the sharpest woman I knew. We'd gone to grad school together. She specialized in family disputes and estate planning. Within a week, we had cease and desist letters drafted and delivered, one to my parents, one to Jonah. The language was formal but clear. Any further attempt to access Ava Taylor's personal, financial, or digital property will be pursued to the fullest extent of the law. I also had Chelsea help me audit every account I had ever shared, co-signed, or linked with them in any way. We closed out the last remaining tie, a long-forgotten emergency card linked to my mother's pharmacy. I changed the locks. Again, not just on my front door, on everything. Email, voicemail, work files. I added two-factor authentication to things I hadn't even thought about in years. My will, my business insurance, the emergency contact forms at my doctor's office. I even had my building install security cameras in the hallway, one aimed directly at my front door, one covering the street. If they were going to keep watching me, they'd have to see I was watching right back. One afternoon, I sat in my living room, sipping tea, watching the security feed on my tablet like it was just another show. The street was quiet, no parked cars, no fake phone calls, just me and a silence I had earned, brick by brick. They wanted me scared. Instead, I was prepared. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was defending my peace like it was property, because it was. It happened on a Thursday. I remember because I'd just come back from a client site, my arms full of fabric samples and sun still clinging to my skin. I was humming, actually humming, something I hadn't done in months. Then I saw the door. It was closed, but not fully. The deadbolt I always locked, hanging loose, the door slightly ajar. My heart stopped. I dropped everything, reached into my bag for the small canister of pepper spray I'd started carrying, and pushed the door open. They were inside. Jonah was sitting on my couch, legs kicked up on the coffee table, sipping my wine, the good bottle I'd been saving. My mother stood by my bookshelf, hands full of framed photos I hadn't seen in years. Dad was there too, rearranging my kitchen counter like it was his weekend project. They didn't look startled. They looked settled, like they belonged. I didn't speak right away. I couldn't. My throat had closed so tightly it hurt. You weren't answering our calls, Mom said, like that explained everything. You broke into my home. We used the spare key, she said casually. The one we helped you hide under the planter. You never changed it. She said it like I should be grateful for the reminder. Like this was just another casual drop-in. You're not doing well, she added, turning back to the bookshelf. We were worried. Worried? I whispered. So you let yourselves in? Drank my wine? Started going through my things? Jonah shrugged. We had to come. You've been acting like a lunatic, threatening us with lawyers, police reports, shutting everyone out. You're isolating yourself. You're violating me. Mom turned, her face pinched. This is your family. I didn't answer. I walked over to the kitchen counter, grabbed my phone, and hit 3 buttons. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, I said, my voice suddenly clear. My home was entered without permission. My family used an old key. I need officers dispatched immediately. That got their attention. Jonah sat up, his wine glass clinking hard against the table. Whoa, you're calling the cops on us? You didn't leave me a choice. My mother stepped forward, panic flickering across her face. Ava, don't do this. You'll regret it. I met her eyes. I already have. You always need us, she said, voice rising. You act like you're so independent, but you always come back. You're not built to be alone. I smiled, not out of joy, but because something finally clicked into place. You're wrong, I said. I never needed you. I just needed permission to leave. The door buzzed 5 minutes later. The cops were calm, professional. Asked my family to step outside. Took statements. Wrote everything down. Jonah cursed under his breath as he passed me. Dad didn't say a word. My mother turned one last time, her voice trembling. You're making a mistake. I said nothing, because for once, I wasn't second-guessing. I was free. It's been 6 months. Half a year since the police walked my family out of my home. Since the locks changed, the cameras were upgraded, and my phone finally stopped lighting up with guilt. I wish I could say the silence was immediate. It wasn't. There were a few final gasps, calls from blocked numbers, a voicemail from Jonah slurring something about forgiveness, an envelope slipped under my door with no return address and a handwritten note that said, "We can still fix this." But I never replied. Not once. Eventually, they stopped trying. Now, I wake up to nothing. No emotional weight pressing on my chest. No calendar reminders to send money for a utility bill that isn't mine. No phantom obligations to people who never saw me clearly. Just me, my work, my coffee, and a quiet that feels like oxygen. My firm is thriving. We signed 2 new clients last quarter. One of my interns just passed her licensure exam, and she cried when I surprised her with a bonus. I still get to build things that matter, that stay standing. My apartment is smaller than the last one, but every inch is mine. The bookshelf still leans a little, the kitchen light flickers sometimes, but I fix things when I want to. I come home and lock the door behind me and feel safe. Not because of a bolt, because no one has a key anymore. Sometimes, I think about going back. Not physically, emotionally. I wonder if I could have said things differently. If there was some version of me that could have endured it longer, smiled wider, stayed useful enough to stay loved. But then I remember standing in my own living room, watching my mother rearrange my furniture like it was hers, and I stopped wondering. They made their choice long before I made mine. The last call came a week ago. An unknown number, no caller ID. I don't usually answer, but something told me to. I picked up, and there it was, her voice. Soft, rehearsed. Ava, she said, it's your mother. I didn't say anything. I just thought, maybe we could talk. Things got out of hand, but we're family. That has to count for something. I listened. She kept going. Her tone walked that old tightrope, not quite an apology, not quite a demand. Just enough emotion to sound like concern. Just enough guilt to bait the hook. When she finally paused, I said the only words that mattered. We have nothing left to talk about. Then I hung up. No drama. No anger. Just quiet. And the silence that followed? It was beautiful.